that impacts you guys. That's ABP specific. Some updates to the disclosure form, some upterms to the long-term plan draft that's been released, and just kind of what to expect there in terms of process, some changes there, and then some portal enhancements we've done with API integration to try to make people's lives a little easier, and a couple other features as well. I have to share. I'm excited we figured out a way where we could all control the slides together. I feel like the age-old problem of passing slides around, this is slightly better. So personally happy we figured that out. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it off to Rhett to go through some program updates.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Dylan. Yeah, to begin with, we have the Designee Management Plan. I know we've had quite a few people reach out about what this entails. And the background is essentially we're required to have this plan that manages 10 different aspects of the program, 7 of which apply to current designees. And so we have a framework that we'll further communicate later, but we wanted to introduce the bones here. The first part calls for review of marketing material subscription channels. The one call out we have for you is to fill out your company profile in the CSG portal. You can include links to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we can review these links to ensure that your marketing is meeting program requirements. If you have any questions on advertisements or any posts on social that you're curious or concerned that might not meet program standards, you're welcome to email them to us at srec@carbonsolutionsgroup.com. Another aspect of the Designee Management Plan is training of employees and agents. As part of that, we often have scheduled meetings via Calendly, and we're offering some new quizzes to offer to back office and salespeople alike. We're going to flesh out that offering as time goes on, but just initially we'll have these kind of Google form based quizzes that have additional information to test the knowledge of your employees. Another aspect of the program is regular communication between AVs and designees. Many of you email with someone at Carbon Solutions Group or have a weekly call or bi-weekly or bi-monthly call. And we're going to formalize this communication chain with monthly outreach by an assigned person at our company. So you'll get, at least on a monthly basis, some check-in, but we are open to weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly calls as need or volume kind of requires. Another aspect of the plan is guidelines for notifying the approved vendor of material changes to business practices. We'll release a list of example scenarios and corresponding action items. Generally, when you're working with a new sub-designee, entering a new line of business, selling or installing, or exiting a business line, CSG should be notified. And again, we'll have a process, typically notification via email, and potentially filling out a designee request form for that new designee. The program has a requirement to ensure designees submit project application materials to the approved vendor in a timely manner. We suggest to our partners that Part 1 information is submitted to CSG within 30 days of the pre-install specifications being finalized, and for Part 2 documents to be submitted to CSG within 60 days of PTO. We don't exactly have a plan for kind of like punitive measures if those timelines aren't met. As you're aware, the program went through a kind of a long transition, and it's made timelines difficult for the program administrator and Carbon Solutions alike to meet. So I think we'll have some grace as we kind of implement a more structured timeline around certain aspects of the process. Next, we have a requirement that designees have a process for reporting consumer complaints to the approved vendor. So if a customer has a complaint about work that you're doing or the timeline for CSG with the program itself, we'll ask you to email again our general inquiry line with a specific subject line detailing as much about the complaint as possible. The intent here is that the program wants approved vendors to act kind of in a more proactive role to meet customer complaints with explanations and action. That's something we're absolutely always willing to do. This will just be a more formalized implementation of that process. Finally, there needs to be a plan for Carbon Solutions to deal with program violations and violations of the Designee Management Plan. Again, we will put a structure in place, but there's not a lot in the way of us seeking to remove features or remove access to the program. That's typically how the program has operated in terms of violations. They remove designee status, remove the ability to submit disclosure forms through the program. In general, we find those actions can be counterproductive to moving customer applications forward. So our process will be kind of fourfold. One, just an initial email indicating what type of violation and a reference to the guidebook or our Designee Management Plan, if applicable. Second, we'll provide additional information about what the program typically does when this type of violation occurs. Third, we'll meet with your team and discuss the type of violation and come up with a plan. And then if there's a fourth instance, we may request to meet with you on a periodic basis until the type of issue is resolved. And I think a common one that we've seen in the past is disclosure form timing, it not being signed before the sales contract. And so if we're seeing continuous issues with that process, then we'll probably request to meet with you to figure out where in your process this is really challenging, or what teams need to be communicated with that aren't. And we hope that this kind of a consistent effort will resolve most issues. That's it for the Designee Management Plan, and we will hold a Q&A at the end so you can ask more specific questions, and we will follow up with a more fulsome plan for your review. But we wanted to kind of get out the structure of it first.
And real quick, I forgot to say at the start, but this is being recorded, and the slides and the recording will be posted within 24 hours to the news section on our portal. So yeah, if anybody else wants to watch this or look through the slides, those will be available after.
Thanks, Dylan. Moving on to kind of more functional, actionable items, the disclosure form. As you're aware, the disclosure form is often changing, and as of June 1st, a new form was released. The program recently released the make a copy function. We hope this will make everyone's life a little bit easier. Oftentimes, disclosure forms do change, and the program requests updated forms. And we'll get to those changes later. But this should make copying the forms, just much easier to meet that requirement. With that, another update was the lift of the 200-character limit. Previously, I've heard from designees that they want to fully explain to a customer what their purchase entails, what specific warranties or services entail, and we're limited by the disclosure form 200-character limit. This is lifted, so feel free to explain in as many characters as you'd like what each aspect of your sale means to the customer. With the lift of that limit, we will provide some stock language to kind of introduce Carbon Solutions to your customer in a more real way, indicating that we're a company that does the SREC incentive, that you have to sign a contract with Carbon Solutions, and that the customer can request a copy of our contract at the point of sale. We want to be transparent about what our contract is. It is a 15-year contract, 40 pages, and some customers, if they see it after the fact, can be upset. And we want to make sure that they're aware they can always request a copy from us at any point during the sales process. Finally, some good news. The DG API working group was announced for September 15th or September 18th. This will be the first workshop in a series with the program administrator as they determine what features, how to implement their API. Once the API is implemented, Carbon Solutions will devote as much development resources as we need to get that integrated as quickly as possible. So when you come to the CSG portal in the future, you'll be able to create the disclosure form, use preset templates, and avoid duplicate information entry, much like the previous implementation Carbon Solutions had under Inclem Solutions. Okay, so that's some good news. Copying a form, we love that. The DG API working group, as well as the lift of the 200 character limit, all good things. Less fun things. The ABP released a full list of changes that require a new disclosure form. Hopefully this won't be as much of a headache because of the edit feature. And there are certain instances where forms are needed, sometimes not. Always typographical errors that cause confusion or are misleading, changes in cost, fees, or rates, incorrect degradation factor listed, incorrect information or change in information about maintenance, repairs, warranties, or insurance, change in DG site controller, property owner prior to installation. Those are always going to need a new disclosure form. Dependent, AC size, this rule is consistent. It hasn't changed. It's only if the size changes more than the greater of 5% or 1 kW AC. We do have a calculator that you can type in the AC before and after to see if a new form is needed. DC size, this is new. It's only if the DC size decreases by more than the greater of 5% or 1 kW. Again, we have a calculator if you're just not into math or don't enjoy trying to figure it out. We have that available upon request. It's just a quick, easy Google sheet. Finally, changes in the terms of the customer's installation. This depends on the change. It should be consistent with the contract. And if you're unsure, you can contact the program administrator or CSG and see if we have any clear guidance. I'll hand it off back to you.
Okay, so quickly going to go through this. It's everyone's favorite acronym, the LTRRPP, Long-Term Renewable Resources Procurement Plan. So this started with some questions being floated by the IPA a few months ago. About, I think 2 weeks ago, the IPA released their draft long-term plan. We're currently in a stakeholder process right now that's open until the end of September 29th. Basically, any stakeholders that are interested in giving feedback directly to the IPA can do so by September 29th. Once that period is done, the IPA will file their plan with the Illinois Commerce Commission on October 20th. Then for the next 4-ish months, we go through a docket of proceeding with the Commerce Commission. I would highly recommend, if you have feedback, to get that feedback into the IPA directly before the 29th. Once it enters the ICC in a docket of proceeding, you will need to intervene. Generally requires hiring a lawyer and kind of like going through a much more formal process. It's a little easier to submit comments before then and get those, basically have the IPA have that feedback prior to they're actually filing their plan. That being said, I think their plan is fairly developed, but certainly subject to change, and all this is subject to Commerce Commission approval. So we're still pretty early in the game here. So with that, I wanted to go through some changes that we've seen and kind of highlighted from the current long-term plan to the new proposed long-term plan. So kind of the first thing is they proposed a partial closing of the program May 1st to June 1st, just to kind of manage program year transition. This isn't something that's been a part of the program before. It sounds like they're up to feedback on that. There's going to be a new methodology for how uncontracted capacity is redistributed. Well, at least there's a new proposal, and all these again are proposed, subject to stakeholder feedback and ICC approval. So take everything with a grain of salt, and they're likely to change several more times. Kind of wanted to hit the highlights here. So essentially, what this means is at the end of every program year, there's extra capacity available. There has been so far, and how that gets reallocated is potentially changing. I think overall, it's likely to result in more capacity going to distributed generation projects. Not necessarily though. So keep an eye out there. What's going to change? Another thing that's important that I think will be helpful to a lot of installers is they're increasing the AC/DC ratio limit to 200%, or they propose that for systems that include battery storage. This is try to bring it more in line with what some inverters on the market are allowing for. We've seen limited exemptions to this in the past, and it would be good to kind of have that rule standardized. Expanding metering requirements to accept inverters compliant with IEEE standards. Another thing, this is fairly big. This is proposed, but increasing the application fee, doubling it to $20 per kilowatt, and then quintupling the per project limit to 25,000. So it's a pretty big change in terms of project costs. I think for resi systems, it's a big jump, but a sort of a nominal difference. For large commercial projects, it's a pretty big jump. So wanted you to be aware of that. Again, please submit your feedback. Along with uncontracted capacity changes, there's a number of different methodologies for kind of reallocating between small and large DG and group A and B. There's about, I'm not going to get into details here, but there's about 6 pages, I think, in the long-term plan with different proposals that the agency is seeking feedback on. If you want to dive into that, I recommend reading through it. Really, the idea here is to address the current situation we're in, where, for example, we have a wait list started for Group A, large DG, and we still have a substantial amount of capacity left in large DG Group B, and just how to address that kind of discrepancy between A and B. And the other thing in this, I have a slide on this, is we're expecting a decline in rec pricing. Historically, rec prices have dropped by 4% per block, and then kind of with most recent long-term plan that's changed and prices went up in a lot of categories. And again, this is just proposed. Very likely that every single one of these prices changes multiple times throughout this process, but just to kind of like give people an idea of what's coming up, some prices are dropping by close to 30%. Some are dropping by 4%. So it's a pretty big range depending on the size and location of the system. So something to be aware of. We'll keep you guys posted as we have more concrete information about what rec pricing will be next year. But I just wanted to highlight to everybody that yes, this is in flux, and it's highly likely that there's going to be substantially different rec pricing, certainly in some categories, once the next program year opens up. And with that, I want to hand it off to Kelsey to go through some portal updates.
All right, so we have 2 new integrations that we have currently offering for the solar project modeling software. It's for Aurora and for Solo. So this will transfer over some of the customer system and array information to pre-fill into the Carbon Solutions Group portal. This is a one-time import that will happen on system creation. So the abilities that the API has is to pre-fill the information and limit some of the errors if you were manually entering it before. Some of the limitations that it has is it is dependent on some of the customizations that you may have in the modeling software. So if you have more customizations on those fields, they may not map correctly into the CSG portal. None of the documentation is transferred, and that information must be accurate. So if you have changed information, then it may not come over depending on when you're doing it within the process. So how to get started if you're interested in doing one of the API integrations is we do have a request form. It'll just have you fill out the main contact for who's going to be facilitating that on your end, and then how you are going to be sharing your company's pertinent information. For Aurora, that is the API keys, a secret, and a tenant or a company ID. And then for Solo, it is just the API keys. We will send out that form with the recording tomorrow sometime, and if you are interested, go ahead and fill out that form. So for Aurora, when you are in our system, if you do get integrated, then you will see when you hit the solar application button, you'll see the import there. It'll say import your Aurora project information to get started. You'll click the yes button, and then you'll input the Aurora project ID, and then you would name the system as normal. Select the type as normal, which if you're doing Illinois would be the new Illinois ABP workflow, and then you'll do the associated account. So it'll be, if you have more than one company, you may see a couple from a drop down there. went to, there we go. In Aurora, the project ID is listed within the URL. So it's highlighted here in red. It's anything that follows the projects and then the slash, and then it goes up until it starts where it says overview. For solo, it looks very similar. This one has a little bit more, has more drop downs than a manual entry of a project ID. So again, you'll see, do you want to select your solo information? You would hit yes. And then you would select the solo company. So if you have sub-installers, it would show you all of your sub-installers to choose who was doing the job there. And then you would select the customer. Once you've selected the customer, then you'll have the ability to select which one of their proposals. So if you have a few versions, or if you have a customer with multiple projects, it will show you all of those projects to select from. And then same thing there, you'll choose the project name as you normally would, the type, and again, the associated account if you have more than one company there. Over to you, Rhett.
Okay. We have a couple other new features to go over. The first one to talk about was DocuSign Instant Send. So when you log into our portal right now, the current process is you complete steps 1.1 through 1.7. At that point, the contract is put in a queue for Carbon Solutions Group to manually send. We do that via a bulk batching process. We've implemented a new API that now when you get to step 1.7, you'll see a send contract button below the view status button. Once that button is clicked, it'll turn yellow. It'll say contract sent, and then that button will be used as a resend for that initial envelope that was sent via DocuSign. Once it's signed, it'll turn to contract completed, active. A couple things to note: the resend button will only resend the initial envelope sent. So if you make any modifications to step 1.4 and change, say, the DC size, you hit resend, it's going to send the old contract. Changes like that, you'll need to loop in a CSG admin to kind of wipe and reset the contract status. This is also a permissioned role. So not everyone at your company will have access to this unless you ask for us to provide access to every user. We will send out a follow-up that requests which users that you would like to have this functionality, or if you just like everyone at your company to have that functionality. And this role can be paired with our new role that Dylan will talk about later. The ABP route calculator. A lot of you may have already seen this. We used to use Google Sheets to share our calculator. This will help keep things current. It has our pricing. It has our fee schedule. It has the current rec pricing, and as we get new rec pricing from the program, we'll update our calculator accordingly. On the left-hand side here below the bullet points, you'll see kind of the front-end output of our portal. And I'll run through just a very quick demo, show you kind of how it works. When you will log into the portal, it'll look something like this. On the left-hand side, you'll see rec calculator. Type in a name, so John Test. The pricing schedule will be by default the current pricing schedule. As we get 24/25 pricing, you'll be able to select that. Utility, select Amarin. AC size, call it 10. DC size 12. Assume it's a ground mount, fixed tracking, 15,000 kilowatt hours a year. Degradation, call it 2%, 15.5. At this point, you can hit calculate, and it'll show the capacity factor, quantity of RECs, DC to AC ratio, fees and bonds, additional collateral if it applies, the fee, gross contract value, all of this good stuff. And then if you hit download, you'll be able to get a quote generated by our system. It looks like this. And you can share that with a customer. It shows who it was generated and when, and the project name, and then has some good disclaimer information at the bottom. We hope this will make it a little bit easier to kind of share pricing information with a prospective customer and kind of stay on top of program price changes and fee changes.
Yeah, and just to highlight there, what the disclaimer language essentially is, that is a non-binding. It shows our current pricing, current block pricing, but it's not a contract. It's just a indicative quote to help share with your customers. So just to be aware of that as you're kind of sharing it. But easier way to get that earlier in the process without filling a lot of stuff out in the portal. There you go. I think I reshared that now, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So next, I'll go through this. There's another new user type on our portal called a read-only user. So let us know. We've had some interest from some installers adding this type of user role. So those folks that have it can use the rec calculator, can view all current applications, view tasks and messages, but they cannot edit systems or kind of add stuff. So this is depending if you want people to be able to log in quickly, check the status of systems, but not have dedicated people that are filling out applications and have them not change anything. Can also be paired with the DocuSign user role, so they can view and kind of send contracts, resend contracts, but not edit system or enter information. So if you're interested in that, let us know, and we can just let us know in the user's email, and we can set up new users that way for you. Okay, so Q&A, and everyone currently is on mute. You can also type questions into the chat. And Kelsey is going to switch so you're able to unmute yourself and either ask a question verbally, or you can type a question in the chat as always.
I think we'll just start with a call out for any questions regarding the Designee Management Plan. If there's anything that we had mentioned that you'd like more information on, let's just start there. And there's the disclosure form changes. We'll distribute the programs chart so that you have a reference for any of those changes. Long-term plan. If there's any questions there.
And I think, Kelsey, are you sure people are able to unmute themselves?
They should be able to, yes, and also chat in. Oh, there we go.
Hey guys,
Hey,
can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hey, this is Daniel Pro with Palmetto Solar. Just letting you guys know, I can't chat in, and I also wasn't able to unmute myself. I'm in viewer only mode, so all I could do is raise my hand. So just letting you guys know that. Couple quick comments and questions. One question on the integration that allows us to send out this CSG rec contract. Rhett, you mentioned that at this time, any system changes would have to be done. You have to go through CSG to complete those. Do you guys expect there'll be any iterations that in the future would allow us to resend contracts if like a system size changes, for example? I could imagine some folks on our side, clicking resend, expecting a new contract is going to go out and not realizing it's the old contract.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think that is something we're considering. Kind of like the question is if contract's already been signed. So we're working on a feedback loop right now. We have like every 24-hour refresh cycle. But I think if we're able to get that feedback loop closed, we should be able to integrate changes. So great question. I think that's in the roadmap, but I'll make sure to touch base with development to make sure that that's a forthcoming feature.
Cool, thanks. On the long-term plan, I saw the 200% AC/DC for storage. There also was a proposed 155% AC to DC for non-storage systems, so for solar only. So I think that's relevant to call out. I don't think many of our projects fall into that category, but maybe just helpful to include. And what was the other thing on the long-term plan? Oh, the potential 30-day closure. I know we're a ways kind of out from that, but wouldn't be applicable, I believe, until at least the next program year. But would CSG have any proposed changes to their portal during that period? Would you guys suspect that you guys would close certain aspects of the application process, particularly the part one during that period?
We definitely kind of cross that bridge when we get there, but what I anticipate doing is kind of what we've done in the past is we will keep our part one applications open in our portal so you can keep submitting stuff to us. We might suspend sending out new contracts temporarily while there's a rec pricing change, just to avoid people getting a contract with old pricing, 6 hours before the pricing transitions. But I believe that we would keep everything open for part one and part two submission to us.
Great, thanks. And sorry, one last question. Designee Management Plan, is there like a physical plan, or is it like working off like the slides, or is there like a kind of written document anywhere?
Yes, we do have a written Designee Management Plan that we will share if anyone wants it. It's kind of basically it's available upon request. It's really for the program administrator to request from approved vendors, but we're more than happy to share that with anybody that's interested. We're just to kind of share specific requirements that apply to your company.
Great, thank you guys, appreciate it.
I did see some questions coming in the comments now. Rhett, there was a question on the disclosure forms on pricing changes. You want to take a look at that one and take it?
Yeah, so based on the forward guidance, my understanding for a price change due to an electrical upgrade or other price change that does need to be included on the disclosure form. With the new edit feature, make a copy feature, I think this type of change could be relatively easy to make. But that is my understanding of the new guidelines, and we'll distribute that to everyone via the news article feature that we have, and upon request. But it is an update that the ABP put out, and yeah, we just follow their guidance on that one.
And I can get this next one. So the Aurora API integration is just Aurora, even though Aurora and Helioscope and Energy Toolbase are all owned together. That's 3 separate APIs that require 3 separate integrations. I will say that Helioscope is on our list of things to do, but kind of given the complexity, there, that one will probably take a little longer, and it certainly won't be available until next year, just because it's a more complicated API to interface with.
Yep. One question about the copy feature. When you copy a disclosure form, it does create a new disclosure form ID. So it is just cloning all the information to a new form. It does require that you re-enter some information about the system. I believe the production amount, the kW size, AC, and maybe something else. We did have a news update that was released, and feel free to check out the clone feature yourself to get a feel for how it works. And if you do have any further questions on editing the forms or any suggestions for CSG or the program admin, let us know. Kevin, to your question, I can see that would be a really useful feature. We will, I'll communicate that to the program admin next time I talk to them. Currently, that is not how it works, and it can be challenging when there's 7 forms for the same customer all floating around. One thing that you do have to change is the name for the new disclosure form. So I don't know if there's a nomenclature that might make that system a little bit easier. Dylan, do you want to take the question about the MEC?
Yeah, so with minimum equity compliance. Everyone had their compliance plans due earlier this year. Those are in effect, and essentially it goes program year by program year. So there will be essentially like you'll need to submit your score at the end of the program year. We don't have any more updates since then. I expect that stuff to start rolling out probably, February, ish next year. The IP's got a lot with the long-term plan revision. I don't expect a lot of updates in the next few months there. And yeah, just the recording will be available in the news section, as well as the slides on our portal, and it will be available tomorrow or Monday. So, and yeah, on the printed version of the rec form, there is a disclaimer on the bottom. It was fine print. I just kind of noted some of those things in there verbally, because I know you probably couldn't read that on the screen share.
I had a quick question, guys. With that send contract button, is that going to be a requirement for us to then touch that send contract button, or is that going to be automated before for the initial send contract to the customer?
So it is a button that pops up that you do have to click. We will basically kind of mass click that button for projects that are ready to send a contract to on some periodic basis. We haven't figured out the correct cadence there, but we won't let projects sit. So if you want to move a project to that status, I guess wait until 1.7 until you're ready to send the contract. Wait to fill out step 1.7. Once that's filled, to us that indicates the contract ready to go out. You can bring it all the way there. Just don't select invoice party if you're trying to fill it out but not send the contract.
Is that contract, that is the CSG contract that automatically goes out basically right now, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Which is, it's kind of automated for us in our eyes right now.
Right. Yeah. Right now it just happens without you doing anything. The downside is essentially you don't know exactly when it's going to go out.
Right.
This feature will just like give you a little line of sight to the customer, like, hey Joe, I sent the contract to you yesterday at 2 p.m. And the resend functionality we think will be helpful as well.
Yeah, definitely. So we're bringing every single customer to 1.7 pretty much as soon as we submit the majority of our paperwork, right? So is that going to be hopefully more readily available for us then?
Yeah. So as soon as you get to 1.7, you'll see that send contract button pop up. And the process here is just let us know if it's everyone at your company to have that access, if it's just specific people.
Sure.
And we'll get that access provided.
Okay, awesome. And one last question: the Aurora API, I'm assuming that's just with Enterprise Aurora. That's not going to be with their basic version that we've got.
That is a good question. I'm not sure. Kelsey, do you know that?
I don't. It might be in the documentation. I can take a look, and if we can figure that out, we can include it in the web blast out.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good question. We haven't had any accounts we weren't able to enable it for before, but I'm not sure. Yes, you will need to check the box to agree to Part 1 submission before the contract is sent. So it's kind of like our final check, because once that's checked, you'll be able to send that contract whenever you want, or it'll get caught in kind of our process where they get sent out in batches periodically. Okay. Seems like questions are slowing down a little bit. I'll give everybody one more minute to get questions in. And if there's nothing else, yeah, thanks so much everybody for hopping on. Really appreciate it. Feel free as always to reach out to any of us or reach out to just SREC at Carbon Solutions Group. Happy to answer any questions you have, help you out with any of this stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
So what is the advantage of the disclosure form copy feature Is it to minimize corrections so we don't keep redoing new forms?
Yeah, I think that's a main aspect of the feature. You can just clone the form and then make edits. Right now, you have to go through and recreate every field. So that's the intent.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for hopping on. I hope everybody has a good holiday weekend. And yeah, we'll be in touch with sending these blasts out, and we'll keep you guys posted as all these things progress. So, yeah, thanks again for hopping on.
Thanks, everyone.